Hello and welcome to the coronavirus lockdown live stream, the show that brings welcome levity to the end of the world, lifting the spirits of many of you currently in self-isolation by infecting as many as possible with comfort and distraction as the apocalypse unfolds. How on earth is everyone? As I glance at my stats, it seems that there are currently 30 watching. And we have greetings coming in. Carolyn sends it all the way from Iowa. Lovely family there, Carolyn, in your avatar. Sid Whittle sends greetings from Northern California. Alicia, our ever-present, is hailing from New Jersey. Fran Koktava and Sean Tava says, good morning from Florida. Rianne is in the house, another ever present in the live stream comments. Akos Gageli says hi all. Annika P says morning. Hello, Annika. Erica Sikic says hi everyone from Sydney. So we have Australia represented. We certainly will have Australia represented when we open up the green room later. Eric Larson is also again with us from Louisiana. Diana Moreno from Stockton, California. Unica Sawika from Gold Coast, Australia. Gosh, Paige Lundy. Hi, everyone watching today in procrastination of many uni assignments. Shame on you, Paige. Shame on you. You should be devoting yourself to higher education in defiance of all of the preachments against higher education in the literature. Shane Meechan is over there in New Zealand with I must say I approve of the avatar. Always nice to see Yoda represented. Mark Wetherill says, Geiger counter started crackling. Must be time for lockdown live stream. Yes, unfortunately, as we have learned recently from Watchtower Propaganda, apostasy is radioactive. So please consider this a health warning that you may in fact be infected with radiation through tuning in to the coronavirus lockdown live stream. Jazz Brookman says, hi Lloyd, I'm on the Gold Coast in Australia. Lots of Aussies around. Meanwhile, on Twitch, Mick Midland sends greetings from Michigan. Oh, there's a... I know this because I am now Croatian. Anna Maria Bencic, ex-Brankovic, says, good morning, or dobro jutro. Jamie Keys says, hey, Lloyd, from Atlanta. Oregon is represented by S. Roderick Roxas Chua. I've almost certainly butchered that pronunciation. The UK is represented. Beetroot Soup. Yay, it's that time again. Hello from London, UK. So, wow, lots of places have been represented in this initial flurry of comments. Jody saying hello. Ian saying hello. Lucille is freezing in Lithgow, west of Blue Mountains, New South Wales, Australia. And John Preston reports his presence. So wonderful. What a lovely introduction to the show. Nice to see you all there. We do have the green room steadily filling with panelists. If you don't know how the show works, by the way, the format we've settled on is that I basically get us underway with a reading from a book. At the moment, we're reading from Take Back Your Life, Recovering from Cults and Abusive Relationships by Janja Lalich and Madeline Tobias. What we then do, so that viewers can be spared having to listen to me prattle on for 90 minutes, is I open up the floor to the green room, and the green room are those who have received links to join the live stream, and everyone who is basically a JWsurvey team member plus some friends of JWsurvey and the John Cedars channel are given this link and they can join us. So it's basically a free-for-all in terms of JWsurvey and friends of JWsurvey, the panel assembles itself. I don't go and decide who joins which show. The panel basically decides who joins. So that format has worked well for us so far, and we're now on, what number show is it even? I glanced hoping, show 28. We're still here. We began when? In March? And we're still here in June. In fact, when we began, I wasn't, one of the reasons for doing the lockdown live stream on Facebook, in fact, the reason was because I was banned from live streaming on YouTube. That ban will be lifted on June the 12th. So there's just this show and 2 more shows, and then we switch to YouTube. So we'll have to bid a fond farewell, I guess. I mean, I suppose we could stream concurrently on Facebook and YouTube, but then we'd have to lose Twitch. We can only do 2, you see, on my current subscription plan. Can't say subscription. So let me know, actually, whether you would prefer, which 2 you'd prefer. Presumably YouTube is good for everyone, because then you don't have to be on Facebook or Twitch. But which is best? I would imagine Facebook is getting the most views when we're actually doing the live stream, but we'll figure that out. In terms of Take Back Your Life, we have actually finished chapter 7, and I thought we might read chapter 9, Coping with Emotions. So we'll see what it says. In most cultic situations, the rewards are few, the pain plentiful. Keeping the pain hidden can be a means of survival. Once you separate from the group or your abusive partner, you may find that you still hide emotions, squelch them, or cannot feel them. You may also be confused by what you actually feel and what you think you should feel. For so long, the group may have defined feelings for you, good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, pure or evil. In many groups, members are taught that certain thoughts and feelings are sinful. For example, thinking that someone is attractive may be considered lustful. After leaving such a group, you need to recognize that having a variety of thoughts and feelings is human and okay. Instead of continually confessing or suppressing your feelings, you can learn to evaluate them and select the ones you want to act on, express, or moderate, as the case may be. Learning to feel, to distinguish between different emotions, and to act or react appropriately is vital to healthy functioning. For some former cult members, discovering or rediscovering the world of feelings is a big part of the healing process. Subheading: the role of emotions in our lives. Feelings are a necessary part of our humanity, and they're vital to our survival. Without feelings, there would be no enjoyment and no sense of accomplishment. We would be unable to proceed with the business of living and would be in danger of perishing as a species. Feelings can be divided into 4 basic groups. This is a bit oversimplified, but it is handy for our discussion. The 4 basic feelings groups are sad, bad, glad, and mad. These are primary feelings, like the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. All other colors are combinations of primary colors, and most feelings are combinations of the primary feelings. Each primary feeling can be further differentiated or combined with other feelings. For example, to feel bad may include feelings of guilt, rejection, or abandonment. Gladness can encompass joy, happiness, love, gratefulness, and a whole spectrum of pleasurable feelings. It is also quite normal for people to have conflicting feelings. This is known as ambivalence. A former cult member's graduation from college provides an illustration. Tears of happiness and sadness flow as Suki W. relishes her achievements and the obvious pleasure of her family. But Suki also feels a degree of sadness at not graduating until her 30s, after having spent more than 10 years in a cult. Feelings combine and recombine and they also come and go. Anyone who has tried to hold on to happiness knows that emotional states are as elusive as the breeze. Forcing yourself to feel something, whether good or bad, is hard work. You can recall a feeling by thinking about things connected to the desired emotion. For example, remembering a moment when you felt moved to tears may revive those feelings. Recalling a time of great rage or fear may again bring up intense feelings. Yet trying to force yourself into or out of a feeling state is counterproductive. Generally, it's best to let your emotions come and go naturally. Subheading: the role of emotions in cults. Feelings are central to us. They are integral to how we experience life and evaluate our experiences, and they influence the decisions and choices we make. Working in concert with intelligence and free will, feelings serve as signals that point us toward goodness, safety, pleasure, and survival. Considering how powerful emotions are and how basic they are to survival and happiness, it is not surprising that they can be used to control people. Controlling someone's emotions means controlling that person. Cultic groups and abusive relationships manipulate emotions in order to influence and control people, retrain them, and ultimately further the cult's or leader's goals. Cult members are taught to distrust their feelings, to suppress certain emotions, and foster others. Guilt, shame, and fear are all used to engender compliance and obedience. Many other feelings are punished, suppressed, or forbidden. What happens to these bottled up emotions? Most often, cults divide members and the outside world into an us versus them polarity that redirects such emotions as anger and fear away from the cult and onto non-members, estranged family, or the government. This ploy also creates an internal justification for cult members' isolationism and antisocial behavior. Life in David Koresh's Branch Davidian cult provides an excellent illustration of this phenomenon. Koresh was harshly punitive to young and old alike in his cult. He controlled his flock by fear, yet he was successful in redirecting his followers' fear and anger toward the outside world. Jim Jones of the People's Temple, Shoko Asahara of Aum Shinrikyo in Japan, Charles Manson, and even mild-mannered Marshall Applewhite of Heaven's Gate are just some of the manipulative, charismatic leaders who ruled with an iron fist while cleverly channeling their devotees' fears and anxieties toward the evil outside world. Carefully planned activities that seem spontaneous, such as singing, chanting, or rituals honoring the leader, manipulate participants' mystical and devotional feelings. Positive feelings belong to the group or leader and are manipulated to offset any negative feelings about unpleasant occurrences, such as physical, emotional, and/or sexual abuse, food, sleep, or financial deprivation, or overwork and isolation. Many cults tend to function on a pleasure-pain principle, dangling the occasional carrot, perhaps a day off, a private interview with the master, a promotion in duties, or permission for a holiday to ensure acceptance of the everyday abuses. What always rules, however, is the stick, which far outweighs whatever perks or pleasures members think they are receiving. I have been reading from Take Back Your Life, Recovering from Cults and Abusive Relationships by Janja Lalich and Madeline Tobias, and wow, so much of this, again, applies to the experience of Jehovah's Witnesses. I realize that not everyone watching this will necessarily have that background, but yes, you definitely see the way emotions are controlled among Jehovah's Witnesses. Gosh, I've left John Preston's message floating. He says, "Woohoo, I'm a famous apostate now." I do apologize, John Preston. Imagine if you were kind of like this about about being online with your identity on an apostate channel, and there's your name just floating for ages. on the John Cedars channel. I do apologize. Very, very irresponsible of me. But we do have a panel to add. So we have Naomi, we have Sasha, and we have Arthur Weber. How are you all?
Very good. How are you doing?
Not bad, Naomi. I'm very
Absolutely
sorry about
marvelous.
how the coronavirus lockdown.
Shall I move over?
Thank you. If you could,
There we go.
we want to be able to see you and simultaneously advertise the show's name. For anyone who's confused about what the show is called, I'm sure that happens a lot. People think could be anything. Think it's BBC News or something.
Particularly with this fine panel that's gathered, yes.
Especially with the professionalism that's on show in every
Absolutely.
lockdown live stream.
I kind of prefer it
so
this way.
how are we all? What's the situation?
Well, it couldn't be BBC News without Covert Fade reading the news.
That's true.
True.
That's true. I wonder how Covert's doing. Last I heard, he was in some failed states trying to oust the dictatorship. He gets up to all sorts in his spare time. He's a very mysterious character.
International man of mystery. That's it. Mm.
You're looking very...
Just Austin Powers.
Just drinking my vitamin drink.
I was going to say, you're looking very relaxed and tanned and refreshed there, Lloyd.
Almost like he's been on holiday.
Like post-holiday,
It's not fake tan, Naomi, before you ask.
Well, show me your hands.
I very, very rarely I
There you go. Yep.
Very rarely I'm tempted to get out a spray tan. But no, this is still my pag tan, I'm afraid.
Nice.
And it's also some color correction from the camera.
It's also manipulation of the image.
Deep fake.
We're honest.
Yeah.
Deep fake tan.
So what's happening in your respective countries re-coronavirus? We do after all have to reference said ailment occasionally because there are still many countries in lockdown. So what's happening?
Go on, Sasha. I think you're probably better.
Well, Australia, thanks, Naomi. I mean, Australia is still doing very well. And again, we're very conscious that we're not going to lull ourselves into a false sense of security. But, the officials are still advising caution. But we've been allowed to open up restaurants, I think, is it 50 people now, Naomi?
Yep, 50. As of 1st of June, I think.
Right. Okay. And then other things like gyms, they're starting to open up. There's a lot of strict criteria to, conditions to opening up, but essentially we're back to close to normal. The roads certainly reflect that. The traffic is almost back to normal.
So sad. Yeah.
Yeah. But, there's still need for caution as Sherry's advised from the things that she hears through the grapevine at the hospital and the surgeons and doctors that she works with. There is still a need for caution. The hospitals are still leaving wards open. Sorry, not open. They're closing wards and they're closing operating procedures to allow the wards to be set up for ICU situations, ventilators and so forth, because they are kind of expecting the possibility of a second wave. And we're in that first 2-week sort of trial period to see what happens after everybody starts getting together again.
It was interesting when we were on holiday. First of all, it's interesting to start doing things you weren't allowed to do during lockdown for the first time and realize how much you take that sort of thing for granted. The basic freedom of getting in the car and driving to the coast and, staying somewhere else and going to restaurants and going to the beach and that sort of thing. It's all very, oh, wow, I can do this again. It's very exciting. But as you say, there's also the need for caution. It's also interesting to kind of compare the subtle differences post-lockdown. And you do have to wonder how many of these changes are with us to stay. So, for example, we'd go to, first of all, it wasn't straightforward finding restaurants, as you'll know if you watch the Pag Diary, but the ones that we did find had the disinfectant on the door. The waiters were wearing latex gloves. You could tell they were being very fastidious about keeping things hygienic, which you could argue they need to be doing anyway. But in any case, it was interesting to see a very marked difference in people's behaviors. And, going shopping, you could see people just trying to maintain a little bit of difference. Not in every case, but certainly in some cases you could see a little bit of distancing going on. And I'm just interested to see to what extent this stays with us now, whether this becomes kind of learned behavior on a societal level, you know?
I'd say you're right, Lloyd. Absolutely. You think about all of the environments we go to where we mix with people. I'm noticing people are giving it that extra space in, personal space. I think that will become our new normal. I know that I find it a bit odd if somebody's trying to stand too close in a queue or in a line somewhere. It feels a bit strange. And generally, people are really, recognizing that. And I think one thing that we will lose is for those who enjoy, a hug or a handshake with friends, we're going to lose that sort of spontaneous warmth that we all might have had, because rightly so, we've had to learn to be more cautious. So yeah, there will definitely be changes that will affect us moving forward, I'm sure.
That's for sure. I caught up with a friend in a park for a coffee, and I've never waved at my friends before. I've realized I only ever really hug them or, I don't know, speak. But to just like stand across from your friend and do that does seem very weird. But I suppose we just get used to that to some extent.
And how are things in Romania, Arthur? Your mic, is your mic muted?
Sorry. So as of June 1st...
It's very rare for me to be wanting to unmute Arthur versus actually muting him once he goes into a triggering... Anyway, go on.
So as of June 1st, Romania has entered into more relaxing state. The terraces have opened, so people are allowed to go to open-air restaurants and... stay at tables of 4 while, keeping social distancing still. But as far as COVID-19 infections are concerned, things are looking much better.
We won't believe you, Arthur, until you get on your bike and show us this with your camera as you're pedaling around your town and show us evidence of what you're describing. So just a subtle hint in that direction. Victoria Roberts says, meanwhile, in the UK, when we have more cases and deaths daily than the total when we went into lockdown, we are also opening non-essential businesses. Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, I think it's safe to say that in most countries, the curve is at least weakening, if not, flatlining. But even so, there's trepidation, isn't there? Because I know when we came out of lockdown in Croatia, there was almost instantly talk of it's almost certain to come back around autumn or fall time. Trying to keep this okay for Americans. It's almost certain to come back in the fall.
Very good.
So yeah, I think there's definitely space for, but what can you realistically do? I mean, like the UK messaging was stay alert. How do you stay alert for something that is literally can only be seen in a microscope, certain types of microscope even? So
yeah, it's weird. I had coronavirus on my face earlier and I didn't even realize. So I don't know.
And all you had to do was take a shimmy to the left and you were fine.
Yeah, stay alert. I'm all over it.
It's nice to see that in the absence of Kimmy, Arthur is actually making this. So just to be clear, if you are watching this as a YouTube manual reviewer on the grounds of monetization, just to reassure you, this is not a current affairs live stream dealing with serious, mature subjects. This is, in fact, a cat video where we focus on cats and how best to stroke them. I have a cat now, actually, but it's just not with me here in the bunker. But yeah. We actually had
Arthur?
That is
Lovely.
That is bizarre.
Actually had an interesting experience last night when our new cat, for the first time met our dog. And it was just fascinating because obviously this is like basically a kitten, and she hasn't been trained to hate dogs. It's just instinctive that when she sees a dog, she arches her back. She opens her mouth and releases threatening noises, and her tail looks like a pine tree. It's just like, it's very interesting. So that's the way she was reacting to Bessie. Bessie's sole interest was, I've got a new friend.
Yeah.
So Bessie's tail was wagging, and she was thinking, Bessie was, if you could translate what Bessie was thinking, she was thinking, I want to kiss and hug you because you're my new friend. And if you could translate what Olivia was thinking, it was, get away from me, you want to kill me.
Yeah.
And you just wish that you could do some kind of Vulcan mind meld where you could explain to each other what they're both thinking. So they're like, oh, okay, right, and then they can just be friends. But yeah.
Doesn't work that way.
No.
Lloyd, one of our good friends here in Sydney who has an Abyssinian cat as well, she's actually named her very, very cleverly Cindy Clawford. So it's on Instagram, Cindy.Clawford. But she's a beautiful, fantastic, beautiful Abyssinian. But they recently was introduced to her little brother, Ernie, and he is a poodle of some sort, I think, but same thing. You see this hesitation from the cat, and yet the dog is just so eager to make a brand new friend. It's amazing to see the personality differences come out with them.
They are.
I mean, I love both dogs and cats, but I recently discovered that I like cats. I prefer cats because of their suspicion. They're constantly suspecting something is going to go wrong, and looking for an escape route, and their mind is constantly not sure what they're surrounded by. Whereas I find this sort of happy blind obedience of a dog triggering to my Jehovah's Witness upbringing.
Bessie's
always
happy. She just loves everyone.
Exactly, always happy, always welcoming people into the Kingdom Hall. Always, too happy.
Do you think Bessie might be a prime candidate for cult recruitment?
Exactly. It's the sheep and the goats.
And she does suffer from the bite model.
Yes.
Sorry, I'll just leave that one there.
Right, as punishment for that horrendous pun, Sasha, we will go straight to Sasha's Poetry Corner.
Oh. Okay, this is a little bit of a shorter one than has been over the last few episodes. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Well, that's what we as kids heard the adults often say. It was a reminder to us to take care of our well-being. So now that we're adults, what is it that we're seeing? Well, sadly, that the planet is marred by figurative cases of ill health, often because of humanity's pursuit of endless wealth, or the failure to tackle real issues brewing from times past. So let's focus on priorities so we're not left feeling downcast, correcting plagues like pollution or racism head on. Yes, examples like these health issues we must focus upon. By working together, we render first aid to all humankind. It's the only way to be successful. Yes, the only way we'll find our way clear to a future brighter for the next generation, ensuring their life is built on a much healthier foundation. So have an apple a day or share a smile either way to give our children the reassurance that we will be okay.
Oh, that was beautiful, Sasha.
Oh, thank you.
Bessie very much approves of that poem. She demanded
Bessie
to come into the bunker to share her enthusiasm for those beautiful words.
Good to meet you, Bessie. This is great. You've just guaranteed us YouTube viewers.
I think, look, if you are a YouTube reviewer, monetization reviewer, and you're not granting us monetization at this point, you cold, heartless person. There's an abundance of animals on today's live stream. It's almost been taken over by them. So please, let's just have a bit of ad revenue.
Hey, Bessie. Any words of wisdom, Bessie?
So, dear brothers and sisters, if you are watching this, you can get a glimpse of the paradise Earth from the future with lovely animals.
Mute him.
Sorry, I was preoccupied.
So was Arthur.
He is adapting. He is like the bug. He's He's finding opportunities.
He found
He's either quicker than I can mute him, or he finds when I'm preoccupied and goes on a bit longer. So yeah, very clever. Anyway,
that was great, Sasha. Touching on all the relevant points.
Well, thank you.
Insert seamless segue to Naomi's Bible box.
Oh, okay.
It's not that seamless because I can't find the intro.
We're all professionals here.
Naomi's Bible box.
Thanks, everyone. So this is when we get to reinterpret TV shows using Bible themes. So this week is Grand Designs, the Ark edition. Yeah, and we're going to just do a little bit of the voiceover of the show. So just to give you a sense of where Kevin MacLeod is at. So it's 8 a.m. and our host, Kevin, has come into the middle of the Arabian desert to meet a couple at the beginning of an ambitious project. Noah and his wife, Noah's wife, both 500 years old, are building one of the biggest structures Grand Designs has ever seen. The specifications of the build are based on a design found in Noah's great-great-great-great-grandfather's library. Their budget is limitless, and the project deadline is the end of the world. Noah and Noah's wife tell Kevin they've been getting quotes on the build, but all the builders have either shaken their heads and said, this is going to be expensive, or have laughed in their faces. So instead, they're bringing up their 3 sons as builders to assist them in creating this ambitious project. Turns out, if you want a job done properly, have kids who can do it themselves. So what is this grand, ambitious project? On paper, it sounds like a simple rectangular-shaped box made of gopher wood. It'll be as tall as a 3-story building and around 1.5 football fields in length. Each of the floors will be made up of hundreds of rooms to cater to the many occupants. The clincher is it needs to be able to float on water. They're building the first ark known to humankind. The occupants are another issue for the inspired couple. 2 of every animal in the world. They've been sourcing them while the children have been growing up, and they've already collected quite a zoo in their backyard. Kevin is partial to the ostriches, although they don't seem to be too fazed by him. To assist with the costs, they've been charging locals an exorbitant entry fee to come and pat the animals, the baby tigers being a particular hit. They've been facing constant challenges with the animals. Sourcing koalas and their eucalyptus leaves have been particularly difficult as their flat earth friends tell them that Australia doesn't exist. The penguins and the polar bears keep dying in the heat, and the dinosaurs have already become extinct. The couple have remained grateful throughout all the challenges, counting their blessings that they decided against the submarine section for the sea life. Kevin disagrees, but he's willing to forego the submarine section when he sees the final build. 55 to 75 years later, Kevin was unable to return to visit Noah and Noah's wife to check in on the final build, as the whole world had been flooded by God, and they'd moved on to creating their own spin-off show called Survivor Guilt. And that was it. That's it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was excellent.
That's
a bit long, that one.
No, that's awesome.
Where do you even begin with the story of Noah's flood? And actually, while you were doing that, what wood did you say the ark is built from?
From gopher wood.
Gopher wood.
I just checked this on Wikipedia.
Is it not right?
No, you're right. That's what it says
right.
in the Bible. Gopher wood or gopher wood is a term used once in the Bible for the substance from which Noah's ark was built. Genesis 6:14 states that Noah was to build the ark of gopher, more commonly transliterated as gopher wood, a word not otherwise known in the Bible or in Hebrew, although some English Bibles attempt a translation. Older English translations, including the King James Version, leave it untranslated. The word is unrelated to the name of the North American animal, the gopher. But yeah, no one knows what gopher wood is.
Well, I think I can project an idea.
Okay.
It was actually what happened was, these are untrained workers, and they got hammers and whatever.
Oh my God.
And really, it was more of an expression. Every time they would whack their hand with a hammer, you'd hear this expletive from the other side of the gopher. Oh, and that's where the name of the wood came from.
Oh,
Well, I'm just imagining myself in Noah's shoes. He's in a location. He's in a location where he has to undertake this incredible project of creating this giant box that can keep millions of land-dwelling species in it.
yeah.
I don't think you'd be too picky about what wood you use. I think you'd pretty much chop down any tree within a radius of, let's say, 10 miles. It's just going to get felled, and it's all going to go into the... No, actually, is that gopher wood? No, sorry, not interested. Only gopher wood will do.
It could also have been an instruction that he gave his sons. He could be like, go for wood.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
it's all been a misunderstanding. Yeah.
Well, I've got to
go
wonder.
for wood.
Yeah. So Kevin MacLeod's there, and he's visiting the site. I've got a couple of good, well-known Kevin MacLeod quotes, and I'm sure that this one was quite applicable. First of all, as we know, Kevin MacLeod, who is a personal hero of mine, who we've met personally, lovely guy, been to his shows. He once said, "I don't enjoy living in a white box flooded with light. I like shadows, small spaces, and old furniture." So I think the whole "don't enjoy living in a white box," well, maybe, they had tar there. And then he says, "Building a house from scratch in the middle of a field is a bit like building a prototype car. As with all prototypes, if you're building a car, you usually have the luxury of producing several prototypes before you arrive at the production line version. So the opportunity for changing things is quite rich. But building a house from scratch in the field does not give you an opportunity to do that." So I'm sure that maybe that was applicable to the episode with Noah. And we would know that he would definitely have used his very, very famous word, Kevin MacLeod's famous word, bespoke. Everything's bespoke. If you ask him to incorporate the word bespoke into a sentence, he can give the best lines.
There you go.
Maybe the use of gopher wood explains how it was able to defy the challenges that have confronted shipbuilders when working with wood, because as was argued in the debate between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, it would be impossible to make an object the size of the Ark out of wood and for it to not break up once subjected to the forces in the ocean. So maybe gopher wood is some material that has yet to be discovered by science.
Steel
is able to bend and flex, and
probably the resin in that wood was sufficient enough to counteract the tidal waves and the forces involved in the waters.
That explains it all. And we are joined by Spiro, a veteran from earlier lockdown live stream episodes. How on earth are you?
I'm pretty good. I've come here to derail the whole thing, make this crash and burn.
Oh no!
Exciting.
Go on.
Or alternatively, as happened last time, our views are going to go skyrocketing now.
I think so. Look, I'm watching the views.
Now, is that hat a reflection of lockdown inability to get a haircut?
You nailed it.
Is there a man bun under there?
It's really bad. I don't know if you can, but that's terrible. Now everyone knows about this part here. No, it's bad. But also, I am trying to bring hats back because I think they're cool. But I'm getting a haircut tomorrow. It's been months, and I feel like Moses in some sense.
You remind me of Joey from what was it, Degrassi? He used to wear this hat all the time.
That's
TV
right.
show. Yeah,
that's right. Thank you. I'm flattered. I'm flattered to be compared to such an icon.
See that all Moses.
Just in time for a segment that I know everyone will have been anticipating when we get to listen to some quality music.
Good morning, brothers and sisters all around the world, and welcome to today's Think Along with Arthur. As I was thinking during the past episode I was in, so last Wednesday, Lloyd triggered me about coming up with lyrics for one of his
Don't blame this on me, Arthur. You must take ownership of this. I don't have any part of it.
No, but you triggered me, and you gave me the idea to cover one of your favorite songs. And that's one of the top songs
the seamless intro. Yeah.
Of the 70s by a certain band named by a vicious bird referred to in the Bible.
I'm waiting for the song to come up so I can accept it onto the live stream.
Yes. Lloyd, can you imagine which song we are talking about?
No, I can't.
No, you can't. Of course, that's a Lloydian humility, the perfect upbringing as a Jehovah's Witness. You know.
Well, I don't know about you viewers, but I have enjoyed today's Sing Along with Arthur. The only difference on this show is that there has been no music, but never mind. We'll find something else to talk. Oh, hang on. What's going on here?
Nothing but professionalism here. Go for
it. Here we go. Do not butcher my favorite ever song, Arthur.
What's happening?
Get that mute button ready.
This is getting personal now. So far, the air guitar's okay. I must say, so far, Arthur, you are nailing this. Well done. Defying my expectations.
On a green pastured highway, warm breeze in my hair, expensive smell of a Macallan rising up to the air. Up ahead in the distance, there was a scent of new light. My reason got blinded as I heard him that my suit and pants were tight. There he stood in the doorway, the convention's about to start, and I was thinking to myself, did I prepare well for my part? His colleague lit up a candle, and they showed me the way. There were voices down the corridor, thought I heard them say, welcome to the Bethel at World Headquarters. Such a lovely place, and the rubber face. Plenty of rooms at Bethel at World Headquarters. The pillows are oh so soft, making you feel aloft. This mighty silver sword twisted teaches us to do the math. Helps a lot of pretty boys walk the righteous path. How they dance in the courtrooms, juggling with the words, swearing that they speak the truth, but they lie us and it hurts. So I called up Siranko. Let's press the bread and wine. He said, we've always had that spirit here since 1879. And still those voices are calling from far away. Wake you up in the middle of the night just to hear them say, welcome to the Bethel at World Headquarters. Such a lovely place, and a rubber face. They live it up at Bethel at World Headquarters. And what's no surprise. Our Brumley's alibis. While looking to the ceiling, my mind get cold as ice when he said, we are all just prisoners here of their own device. And in the ivory towers, they prepare a poisonous feast. They stab us with spiritual knives and tear us like a beast. Last than I remember, I was running for the door. Had to find a passage back to the freedom I long for. Relax, said the night man. We are programmed to deceive. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Rock it!
Wow.
Yeah, this is a long part, I think.
We're like halfway through, man. Halfway through.
Yeah. We'll be here all day.
The
I think
finger
it's
work,
like
though.
6
The
minutes.
finger work.
Look at
Finger
that
work.
face.
Oh,
That's his guitar face.
I suspect it's not. Anyway.
I like that he throws himself into it. Say what you will about Arthur.
There is just so much of
And we
this
do.
solo to go.
Anyway, that was fantastic. So
Okay.
Where
Thank
was
you
the
so
slow
much.
fade? Where was the radio station slow fade? And
we don't do slow fades on the lockdown live stream. We do brutal cuts.
Well, Arthur, much respect, my friend. Much respect.
Amazing.
I think
So-
Arthur may have broken the lockdown live stream because while he was doing that rendition of, again, my favorite song of all time, which I'm going to have words with him, off air about that. I was getting messages through from Facebook saying your video is blocked for copyright infringement.
Oh, no.
So,
no.
Can you let us know in the Facebook comments whether you can still see the live stream? I am still getting Facebook comments coming through, but are you still able to
Are
follow
you
what we're saying?
serious?
Yeah, I'm serious. I was getting.
Oh, damn.
It's bound to happen at some point. The algorithms, and that's being such a well-known song, of course, and in my view, piece of art, masterpiece.
Mm-hmm.
So just let us know in the comment. So Victoria Roberts says yes, we can. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Rianne says yes, we can still see it. So does Victoria. So yeah, you haven't broken. It's a win-win. You haven't broken the lockdown live stream, Arthur, and it seems you've nailed it. So
Totally.
What are your thoughts?
Brilliant lyrics.
How do you feel that
Absolutely.
went?
Yeah, I really feel great because I've come up with the lyrics for this rendition on Saturday morning because actually when Lloyd said about Eagles and Hotel California last Wednesday, I said, wow, I gotta come up with a apostate version to this song. And well,
You
I did it.
That was brilliant.
Rihanna is saying that we need the lyrics. So can you pass on the lyrics to me, assuming you have them in copy-pastable format?
Course,
and I'll put
course.
them in the video description once it goes up on YouTube. But yeah, that was very good. Very good, Arthur. Any other thoughts from the panel?
I think
That's
it's
right
the best
up there
one
with
yet.
the- Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
You were really digging it, Spiro. You were really getting into it from
Man,
the beginning.
I
Yeah.
loved it. I mean, it's a great song. It's a classic, first of all. The lyrics were like, and I'm being genuine here. I know it's a bit funny, but I'm being genuine, like really well done. And in a somewhat more joking fashion, it's right up there with that Barry Manilow song that the one of the videos did, where it was like that almost like sex song, almost a JW approved sex
Yeah.
song. You know, that's what I call that song. I can't remember if that song is. Yeah, it was in a broadcast video. That's right. I remember now.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, yeah, it's right up there, man. Right up there, almost at
That
the
was
same
brilliant,
place.
Arthur.
Yeah.
I love your initial opening line where you're talking about the Macallan. I mean, you just
that was great.
you nailed that.
That's great. I do have a question.
Yeah.
Did you like set up like all 6 minutes? Because I know it's like a 6-minute song. Like it's a pretty long one. Did you do like fill out the whole thing?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if like, and then the guitar solo at the end, is that the actual line? Because it's been a long time since I've heard.
Yes.
Okay.
But Lloyd cut it off before the actual backing track got cut off because
Got it.
backing tracks on karaokeversion.com don't have faded ends.
Ah,
Right.
okay, got it. Okay, cool.
Well,
was
that's
good.
commitment, Arthur. Total commitment to the
Yep.
cause, my friend, and
Good
that's
job.
brilliant.
Well, after Naomi did such a wonderful pitch for her great design, which was actually an arc in itself, act of random kindness to refer to
Ooh.
Evan Almighty.
Oh, thanks. Thanks,
Wow,
Arthur.
what a wordsmith, eh?
I know.
Man. Yeah.
So I had to come up with something that at least pars up to Naomi's wonderful idea.
Oh my God.
Simon
Arthur.
Instone being rude here. Is that song not old enough to be out of copyright anyway? How dare you, Simon? Of course not. Still very recent by Noah's standards.
Lord has
That's
aged
true.
himself.
No, I love that
And-
song.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a good one.
brilliant. So, can
Yeah.
you play that, Lloyd? Because you play a few instruments.
Yeah, I
don't you?
can't. I can do a version of it. So I basically, for anyone who doesn't know, I do play a bit of guitar, although I haven't played in years. I'm actually thinking of getting a new guitar sort of this year. I've asked for it for my birthday, actually.
Hmm.
But I do a version of Hotel California, it being my favorite song, that's just basically strumming the chords. I obviously can't do the lead or anything like that. But yeah, I do a version of it. So.
Like a Hilton, a Hotel Hilton, as opposed to
Yeah, a hotel
Or,
travel lodge.
Or Ramada, because that's
A Best Western.
yeah. Okay.
Brilliant.
Anyway.
Absolutely brilliant. And
I was tempted to join in, by the way, but I didn't want to steal any of Arthur's limelight. He was doing such a great job.
Yeah, because I could have muted him.
You see, I don't like the way the power is going to Arthur's head here.
Them's fighting words.
I'm just for the sheer thrill of it, Arthur. I'm just now mousing over the option remove from stream, just to remind myself of who has ultimate power here. Unlimited power.
It's a slippery slope, isn't it? How the power can get to your head, and suddenly
It really does go to my head, to be honest, when I do these live streams. Goodness knows what it will be like when we're back on YouTube. But there we go.
I'll get you next time, Gidget. Next time.
So, Spiro, tell us what's new in your world, and if you could give us some reflection of how things are in terms of lockdown or lack of lockdown in Canada.
Yeah. So everybody I know is safe and healthy. So I can't complain about anything, and I'm very grateful for all of that. There's not a heck of a lot more you can ask for in this time. Lockdown wise, things are starting to ease up a bit here. So some of the stores are opening up, restaurants, doctors, dentists, even like barbers, hairstylists, stuff like that. But with some precautions, you have to sanitize, make sure you're wearing your mask, keep distancing in mind, all that stuff. So it's kind of starting to feel like normal. Traffic is starting to look a bit normal. The amount of people on the street is starting to look a bit more normal, like what it was before. And then, of course, a lot of us up here in Canada, I'm just going to make broad sweeping statements for all of Canada now. I don't care.
You see, the power's going to your head now, Spiro.
Yeah. I'm the only Canadian on the panel, so mwahaha, try and stop me, suckers.
But because you're Canadian, you can just insert the word sorry randomly and it'll all be
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry to everybody that I'm about to do this, but I'm going to do this. But I think we're kind of, everyone's kind of looking at what's going on in the States. And I think there's a bit of a mixed reaction, but most of it is like kind of, I don't know, just it's not right, you know, what's going on. Concern, you know, like it's chaotic and concerning. And really, I think from now I'm going to go personal. Just for me, regardless of what side you're on, you know, regardless of what stance you take in the whole thing, I just want everybody to be safe. I just don't want people to get hurt, you know, just everybody stay safe and continue to remain healthy. And I'm kind of curious what this is going to mean for the coronavirus stuff with people getting so close together, you know, during the protests and how it's going to play out. I don't know. Time will tell.
Are there any concerns about, I mean, obviously you share the same continent, but that doesn't necessarily mean you share the same societal issues.
Sure.
Are there any concerns about inequality in Canada, or is it a case of this being mostly an issue mostly affecting America?
I would argue that it's a bit more specific. So there are some inequality issues up here. But I would say that they're not necessarily around the Black community, if you will. It's more around, like, we have an Indigenous population up here. And I know a lot of people who are they look down on them quite a bit. Almost like it's some kind of rite of passage to do it in some respects. It's not rampant, from my experience. There's like maybe, you know, a handful of people I can think offhand who have acted that way in the past, but that would be the primary thing that would jump out at me. And then a lot of people in the Asian community, particularly with the coronavirus, especially locally, I've heard quite a few stories of unfortunate racial attacks of verbal and other kinds. So, like, we have our own kinds of equalities, but I think we're just targeted at different communities because we're kind of mixed in a different way in Canada. Mixed with different type.
Do you have issues with police brutality?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I know that there have been some protests here in solidarity to what's going on in the States. It's been fine. And I think the worst protest that involved some sense of violent rioting and, you know, property destruction and all that was like when the Canucks lost the Stanley Cup here. You know, like, that was the worst thing that we rioted about in my recent recollection. So, you know, I just don't think it's quite the same here. And the culture is a little bit different. I'm just gonna say up in Canada, people seem a bit more relaxed, nicer. I think it might have something to do with we're kind of exposed more to nature, and it kind of is a calming effect. Whereas certain parts of the United States, you live in big cities and you don't get access to some of the more calming things that you come by naturally here in Canada. So maybe people are more pent up. And then, you know what, honestly, the lockdown, people are in quarantine. It's driving them crazy. Like, everyone's going crazy, right? So, you know, it just takes a little bit of a push and everybody goes off the handles. So.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've been to America a few times now, and I've only been to Canada a couple of times, so I don't have too much experience with Canada. But I can only say that as a Brit, when I visit America, I don't know. It's hard to describe it. I'm always a little bit on edge and a little bit intimidated. It's almost as though even just the sight of, like, an ambulance going by or a fire engine going by is a far more intimidating spectacle than if an ambulance went past in the UK or a fire engine went past in the UK. Much louder, much more aggressive noises. you just feel a little bit more on edge, you know, when you almost from the moment you step off the plane. And I know that I'm probably speaking. Probably there's a bit of bias there because you always feel more at home in your own country anyway, don't you? So, it's interesting how things work in different countries.
Yeah,
but now since you've
no, go ahead.
But now since you're officially a Croatian citizen, you're at home in Croatia as well.
True. Well, this is kind of, you raise an interesting point, Arthur, because I do feel at home in Croatia, and in many ways, I feel more relaxed in Croatia than I feel in the UK. That was, I think, one of the things that aided my waking up when it was moving here as a believing Jehovah's Witness. First of all, I had the language barrier, so I couldn't understand what was being said at meetings. But I also felt as though I was kind of disengaged from we'll call it the rat race, you know, this continuing cycle of kind of working 9 to 5, of feeling like you're constantly in a race just to keep your head above water, which is how I felt, not just in terms of my religion in the UK, but also in terms of dealing with debt, of finances, of paying for rent and all of those sorts of things.
Yes.
I felt like coming to Croatia, all of a sudden it was like being plucked out of that system, and suddenly I'm in a nice, serene environment. I don't particularly need to worry about rent or mortgages or anything. I mean, as it happens, we were living rent and mortgage free in a building owned by Diana's parents. But even if we were to rent somewhere, the rents in Croatia are next to nothing, are peanuts. So that wouldn't have been an issue anyway. So yeah, I guess, you know, I feel more relaxed in Croatia anyway, which is one of the reasons why I've been thrilled to get citizenship, because I've been here for 10 years. I'm eligible for citizenship, and that also means that I kind of get to keep my EU citizenship despite what's happening with Brexit and that kind of thing. But in terms of culture and society, I think also comparing Croatia with America, I'd have to say, and you know, this, I'm speaking for Diana now as well, we both feel just that little bit more on edge when we're walking down the street in, I don't know, San Diego or LA, compared to how we'd feel walking down the street in Zagreb, you know.
Yeah, you know, you make a good point about, Spiro, about the environment that we live in can often contribute to the stress levels as well. And you say the same thing, Lloyd. You know, that Sydney is, I think it's in the one of the top 10 cities in the world, most expensive cities to live in, Naomi, if that's right. I've heard figures like that.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So it's hard to keep one's head above water on that treadmill just to take care of the basics. And, you know, I think we've all thought about the idea of just, you know, disappearing off to a smaller environment where it's safer.
Totally.
But
oh, sorry.
No, please.
I was just going to say that I feel similar, Lloyd, to what you were saying about being over in the US. And then when I think about that feeling of just never really feeling safe, I think that really gets to the heart of what the protests are about. Is imagine always.
Americans are sick of that. Americans are sick of not feeling safe, and especially not feeling safe from police. I mean, the police are there to protect and serve, not to beat people up on the slightest suspicion. So, yeah.
Well, exactly. And just how differently people of color are treated. And, you know, I think if you're not in that boat, it is impossible to really understand it. All you can do is, you know, listen and try and get your head around what that must be like. But I cannot imagine the feeling of seeing a police officer and then not feeling relief, right? Because that's how I feel. You know, if something's happening and I see a police officer, I suppose through my own experiences feel the relief. And to just feel terrified, like this could all just blow up in your face and you could die as a result of this encounter, is something just no one should feel and no one should be experiencing. So you can kind of get where they're coming from. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely,
that's a good point. And I must share too the Australian perspective on this too, because I've been doing a lot of research and had a lot of information shared with me about the situation for our Indigenous population, because this has helped to bring to light the fact that this happens around the world. Spiro, you mentioned the same. different minority groups are mistreated. So it's important to note, one of the commentators said that while Australia and the US are in many ways two different societies with two different histories, many of the issues and struggles around incarceration, police brutality, and racial profiling of Black and Indigenous people are similar. We actually had a Royal Commission in 1991 in Australia into Aboriginal deaths in custody. And since that Royal Commission, there's been 420 more Indigenous Australians dying in state custody or at the hands of law enforcement. That's a rate of 14 deaths per year, of more than one death every month for nearly 3 decades after the Royal Commission was launched to try and root out this sort of thing. That said, here we go. Indigenous men are 15 times more likely to be in custody than non-Indigenous men. Indigenous women, 21 times more likely to be in custody and be mistreated than non-Indigenous women. And then children. Half of all the children in this country under youth justice supervision are Indigenous and are mistreated, not given the opportunities to better themselves. It says more than 400 deaths since 1991, not a single conviction, zero, nada, zilch, not one conviction from any of the officers or law enforcement that were on duty or that were implicated in the deaths of these ones. So this commentator for the ABC said, folks, if we're angry about police brutality in the US, and rightly so, I would also very strongly encourage you to look at what is happening in Australia and urge you to follow Indigenous authors, writers, academics, artists, journalists who speak and write about Aboriginal incarceration and police brutality and neglect. The rate at which we incarcerate Indigenous Australians is truly our great national shame. I have to share that because it's happening around the world.
You just feel as though, I keep saying this in relation to cult issues and the way groups like Jehovah's Witnesses are able to get away with so much without state intervention. You just feel as though we're living at the wrong point in history, as though there's so much room for progress in so many areas. I mean, if you go back 100 years to 1920, you find yourself before the civil rights movement. So you have open segregation. You have, in many countries, women being deprived the vote. That's only 100 years ago. Now we're at almost a crossroads, or reaching a crossroads, you might say, in the 21st century. And we're kind of realizing that we're still not there. There's still so many areas in which society needs to improve. I was watching the news, the Sky News for the UK yesterday, and they were bringing out that if you are from what might be described, I mean, I don't really like using the word, but from an ethnic minority, you are far more likely to die of coronavirus based on the statistics they've been receiving. I think for people of Bangladeshi origin in the UK, they were twice as likely to be among the, I think, 44,000 fatalities in the UK. So clearly, there's a broken system there. That alone kind of speaks to a degree of inequality that absolutely needs to be addressed. I guess, from my perspective, I just worry how that change is going to come about. I know Kimmy was saying in our last episode, she was mentioning the R word, revolution. I don't know how that could play out based on the current politics, both in the UK and in America. I don't know how you can go from protests in the street to meaningful change, given the political framework that we're working with, where you basically just have to vote for the better of two evils. There is no shining kind of progressive candidate who you know is going to A, have the desire to fix things, and B, the means to do so. That's kind of my thoughts on things.
At least, though, as you rightly say, we have a lot to work on, and whether or not it's sorted out through revolution or changes in governments or systems, but at least we're talking about it now. And, you know, you mentioned 50, 80 years ago, not even. If there was violence committed upon a person of color, it wasn't talked about. It was, they just had to go home and get over it. And that is so wrong. At least we're now all taking a stand and shining a spotlight and saying, this is not okay. Now, we still have a long way to go to catch up to fix the problem, but at least, as we've seen, social media has absolutely made this front and center of everybody's attention. There is no way that we can bury our heads in the sand anymore and just pretend these situations don't need addressing. So I kind of say that, as we've often said, at least the world is getting better. We've made huge advances with healthcare, with scientific accomplishments, with so many other things. And maybe we're just on the cusp of making huge changes to the way that we view one another and our backgrounds. But we're aware of it at least.
Simon Instone says policing in the UK has its issues, but they do have to know how to de-escalate things, because the people they are dealing with are very likely to be better armed than them. That's true. I think gun laws play a huge role in helping people feel safe. I mean, I don't want to get drawn into that whole debate, but speaking as I am a Croatian, but I am also still a Brit. Speaking as a Brit, you do feel safer knowing that people are less likely to have guns if you do see some kind of altercation. And in the UK, you're probably more likely to be assailed with a knife than with a gun. Diana Moreno says, I feel more relaxed in Mexico. My family in Mexico say that people over there are now sarcastically saying they'd like the wall to be higher.
Yeah. Well, Trump did get to build his wall. It was just around the White House, that's all.
Indeed, yeah. Gosh. Interesting times. And I guess, again, dealing with, touching on the coronavirus thing, you have to wonder what's going on in the mind of a Jehovah's Witness, because you have, the plagues, the diseases. They had on their website the 4 horsemen, and they were even saying world events now attest to the prophecy of the rider of the pale horse, or they said something along those lines. And then just recently they've changed it over to the protest. They are properly milking this.
Yes, on Monday evening, European time, they put up the cover story of an older Awake magazine that was dealing with protests.
Do they have tick boxes next to the 4 horsemen yet that they can just tick them off as we go through? I mean, they should do something like that, like bingo, like end of the world bingo. We could all participate.
So I'm looking at the JW.org page now, and it has
like this.
The heading is protest the answer is the main kind of heading, and in the featured videos, or among the featured videos, one is I wanted to fight injustice, an experience from JW Broadcasting from someone who was involved in, I think, the Black Panthers movement and decided that went against what the Bible required. So, yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are jumping all over this, or will be, and you wonder what it's going to be like in the congregations right now. They are surely going to think great tribulations almost upon us.
Well, it's the final part of the part of the last days, undoubtedly.
I'm torn too, though, when I think that as individuals, we have no ill will toward individual Jehovah's Witnesses. Obviously, we feel for them. That's why we all do the work we do. As individuals, they're heartbroken to see these things take place on the world stage. We're assuming that they personally hate to see an individual person hurt or mistreated or killed in the way that we watched the other day. But it really strikes me as a massive step of cognitive dissonance, because at the very same time, they're eagerly praying and anticipating and rubbing their hands together in glee for the death of 8 billion more people. Essentially, the same thing that they are disgusted about on a single scale, they're eagerly looking forward to on a magnified scale. So you've got to wonder, how do they rationalize these eager expectations for 8 billion deaths?
I have an opinion on this. I don't think that individual Jehovah's Witnesses realize that the official stance of the organization is that Jehovah will actually kill everyone who's not part of the witness organization. So they think that, just like Lloyd said in the video last night when talking about the last question, that people really think that, well, Jehovah will be looking at the state of heart of non-witnesses, and they might spare at least some of them or a significant part of them. Because,
sure, but they're still going to kill a massive amount of them.
Yeah,
and how many is acceptable?
And,
a billion?
and as I pointed out, Arthur's referring to my latest upload. You have better morals than Jehovah, I think is what I've called it.
Yeah,
and I point out that, you know, one of the things that you have to deal with as a Jehovah's Witness is the belief that that 7.8 billion people need to die in order for wickedness and injustice to be addressed. And I point out that I kind of recognize when I'm talking about that there are going to be some witnesses who make justifications and say, oh, you know, Jehovah's going to decide, he's the one who reads hearts and that kind of thing. And as Arthur says, I think that is just, in a way, very telling, because they have this cognitive dissonance on that. So they've introduced their own kind of belief system that isn't the official belief system. And what I say to people who have that belief system is, I prefer your religion to the Jehovah's Witness religion, but it's still not the Jehovah's Witness religion, because according to what it says in the organization's own literature, only Jehovah's Witnesses will survive.
Only even baptized. It even makes that clarification, doesn't it?
And we can be even more specific, because Tony Morris said if you're not preaching every week as a Jehovah's Witness, then you're going to die. So it's not even going to be the 8.5. It's not going to be the 8.5 million. It's going to be less than the 8.5 million. So yeah.
But one of the things that I noticed about, once you leave, death is much more impactful after a while, because you don't talk about death all the time. You're not hearing about everyone being destroyed or murdered. So when a death does happen, or you talk about, stuff that's happening around the world, and there's, this many deaths, that feels a lot more real. But when you're talking about people being destroyed and deaths and killings all the time, like every week, I reckon you do get desensitized to what it means. And I don't think they really do think, okay, well, that's a lot of dead bodies even to try and deal with at Armageddon. Like, what are they going to do with them all? I mean, it's like, they're very, very real things that they're just not thinking about.
Have the birds eat them.
Yeah.
You shut out so much, don't you, as a Jehovah's Witness? And it's only when you give yourself permission to think things through logically that you start to look back in horror at what your beliefs actually were, because you never really... I mean, do you remember when we used to talk about how things would be in the paradise? And we used to say things like, well, where are we going to get our water from? Who's going to work in the electricity plants? And you'd always have someone say, well, it's wrong to speculate. And that's a thought-stopping technique, isn't it?
Yeah.
The beliefs are starting to unravel because you're putting a magnifying glass against them. Take away the magnifying glass so that they'll all make sense again,
Yeah.
And I had a situation very much like that when the great tsunami happened in the mid-2000s. And maybe I was starting to wake up a little bit. Maybe there were little slivers in my JW indoctrination, because I remembered saying to somebody, but isn't it a good thing? Because all those people who have now died, well, they're guaranteed a resurrection. They're guaranteed entry into the new system now, aren't they? So by that rule of thinking, actually it'd be better if everybody died now, because then their sins are forgiven. And so we should actually have more mass destruction of people now rather than waiting for Armageddon.
It's an amazing loophole, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like an amazing way to get your head around it and make good of it in a way. Because like 200,000 people dying is a lot for our little brains to take in. So it makes sense.
Esbo9 says it's like when you're on the ministry, you go around the territory picking out the houses you'd want, not considering the dead people you'd have to walk over to get it. We've all done it. We've said, this is my Armageddon house. I'm going to be stepping over the charred remains of the current occupants at some point to take possession of their house. Amazing.
I used to get really stuck on the idea, how will everyone just stop having babies? Like, how do you just stop having babies, or how because they used to say, I don't know what your answer to that was, but I was told you just won't have a desire to have babies. Like, Jehovah will kill that desire in you.
Yeah, because there's a thing about childbearing will cease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jehovah will definitely use a means of stopping
Oh my
Lloyd
God,
from pressing the mute button.
You censored yourself.
I wanted to hear what you had to say there, Arthur. I was genuinely intrigued. But no, it's amazing what we used to come up with by means of justification, and you can only imagine the conversations again that are happening in congregations as they behold not just the coronavirus, but now the civil unrest, and they start saying it's only a matter of time before these police in riot gear start turning their guns and their truncheons on us,
Bunker style. Yes, bunker style. If your beliefs require mental gymnastics to rationalize, then there's a problem with those beliefs. Truth should be truth, and it should just be really easy to swallow and easy to understand. You shouldn't have to tie one's mind up in mental gymnastics to make it all fit together. That's like getting a jigsaw puzzle and just forcing the pieces to fit. They either fit or they don't.
Yeah, Mark Weatherbill says pillows will be distributed.
I'll just stop children. Nice one, Mark.
Grief. Yeah. But yeah, it's there's all sorts of stuff, isn't there? Like when my mother died, I mentioned this in my book. One of the biggest problems in my family was my dad grappling with the whole idea of what would his relationship be to my mum once they're reunited in the resurrection.
True.
Because Jesus said people will neither be married nor given in marriage. So they're no longer. So if I were to be reunited with my mother, which obviously isn't going to happen, but she would still be my mother. But the same would not be true of his relationship because she would no longer be his wife. So this causes real anxiety in people, which is why I devote an entire box to it in my book. Because Watchtower's attempt at dealing with it is to just totally fob people off with, oh, well, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see what happens, is essentially what they say,
Just leave it to Jehovah, and any problems that you foresee with the way the new system will work, it's all just going to be solved by magic. I mean, Holy Spirit, where it'll just solve all the issues.
Let's just wait
Holy
and see
Spirit.
what happens is basically the answer to all of these conundrums.
Or just living forever, that as an idea. I used to really dread it because I bore easily, so the idea that you could do something and then just forever and ever, and it goes on and on and on. It never really appealed to me that much. And I always wondered how you could get out of it when you'd had enough.
Yeah. You can just about get your head
I
around.
always felt the opposite.
All right, go on.
Oh, really?
I always felt opposite of that. I always felt like I can live forever. Like that sounds great. There's so much stuff I want to do, and there's so much stuff for learning. Like let's just take science for example. There's so much stuff in science that's like unexplored territory. Right, you can just go forever and ever and ever.
But you can imagine, you can sort of get your head around 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. But then when we start getting into thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years,
Sure. And I'm not sure. I'm not saying that there's not an end to everything, but look at what's happening. Like just look at our own lives, or even say the last 100 years, and the things that we've done and discovered in the last 100 years, and how much more there is yet to do. And it's like, it's almost like if I have to pick between two extremes, one is living a super short life by comparison and seeing, a bunch of stuff and then dying and then knowing that there's so much that I could have seen, versus being around forever and ever and ever and seeing potentially everything there is to see. Me personally, I'd be like, I want to see everything there is to see. I'd rather be bored than dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I know
fair.
lots of
That
people who
makes
say like,
sense.
I don't get the for everything, and I've always felt differently. I'm like, yeah, man, sign me up. I want to live forever. I want to see it all, and then whatever happens, happens. I don't care. After I've seen it all, then I'm like, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of what you say too,
Yeah, I
Spiro,
get it.
it goes to the whole concept of whether we can appreciate our life now. Now, when something is finite and it has an end, we value it far more. You know, if you've got that last bit of cake that you've been looking forward to, you're going to enjoy it. But if there's 30 cakes there, no big deal. We have a finite period of time left, and so we enjoy it. And it's not that we live recklessly. We actually savor each day that we have because we know there's an end. Those that put off living now for some utopian idealized future never actually live life. They never actually enjoy things now because it's all just a temporary spot until the real life starts.
Along similar lines, Paige Lundy says, we create meaning from life because ends exist. I feel like nothing would matter and nothing would have meaning if everything was forever. That's definitely how I feel. I suppose one interesting line of thinking is that as science progresses, you increasingly hear talk of the possibility at some point of humans finding a way of increasing their longevity, either through, some kind of genetic breakthrough or through, I don't know, uploading someone's consciousness into a computer or any kind of avenue. There's even talk that if you are of a certain age, I think once it was something like if you're younger than 40 or something, there's a chance that you might not die. That's how fast science is coming up with solutions to aging and that kind of thing. So we might ironically end up with something approaching immortality anyway, irrespective of the paradise teaching and that kind of thing.
Wow.
But these are all very interesting questions to grapple with, regardless of whether you buy into the Jehovah's Witness theology.
If anyone's watched Picard, we know it's possible.
Yes, exactly. And I was actually thinking of Picard because you have that scene where Data asks Picard, "Can you turn me off?" Because I want to die so that my existence will have been human, because human existence has an end to it, and I want to have an end. So
exactly the same idea was explored in the Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams.
Yeah, that's right.
He wanted to turn himself to become human, and humanity involved having a finite life.
No one can accuse the coronavirus lockdown live stream of shirking these profound philosophical issues. We will take on anything, throw it at us, and we'll ponder it.
Levity or seriousness.
And if someone might get bored in the Witness Paradise Earth, why not travel to the Mormon planets? And the other Mormon gods,
the Mormons. That's right. Yes.
Gosh.
Hadn't thought about air travel. God damn it.
Anyway, on that note, I will bring today's lockdown live stream to an end. It's been a wonderful conversation with you all, with my wonderful panelists. Again, we are pursuing the same schedule for June as we had for May. In other words, a show every Wednesday and a show every Saturday. Arthur, what are the times?
So for Wednesday, it's 6:30 Universal Time, and on Saturday, it's 3 p.m. Universal Time.
And the next two lockdown live streams will also be on Facebook and Twitch. But then following June 12th, we revert to YouTube once my ban lifts. So that should be interesting.
See the graphic now. You can have jail cell bars and your head poking through as an opportunity. I'm out of prison.
Then make some reference to the trampling of some biblical reference.
Yes, it can be a fulfillment of prophecy. Correct,
Revelation. Yeah.
I like your thinking.
1914, 1919 thing. Just go all in, man.
I like
mean, the
your
worst
thinking.
thing
You
would-
should come on the show more. By the way.
Okay. I'll do it.
The worst thing would be if the June 12th doesn't come about and it turns out to be later than that.
Yes.
But you
Yeah.
know,
It's very soon now, but yeah.
this
Just around the
this
corner.
Monday, the Gilead graduation that caused Lloyd to
Yes.
get a ban from living on YouTube got posted to JW.org as the first part of the June JW broadcasting.
Just to rub salt in the wounds.
Yes.
But anyway, it's been a wonderful show. Thanks again to my amazing panel. I hope you've enjoyed this show. Please do, as always, stay safe, stay positive, and we shall see you on our next show. Take care.
Bye.